Was I wrong to stand on my porch, look my suddenly interested family dead in the eye, and ask them, which of your exclusive events am I interrupting right now? Tell me if you would have done the same thing, because after 12 years of being completely and utterly frozen out of every single family gathering, no weddings, no holiday dinners, no birthday parties, nothing, the sight of their Lexus SUVs and pristine Sunday best clogging up the driveway of the luxury home they didn't even know I owned felt like the ultimate, bitter, twisted joke. This whole mess started a long time ago, back when I was just starting out, fresh out of college, ambitious, and frankly, naive enough to think that family actually meant something. I come from a large, sprawling, and what I now realize is an incredibly materialistic and judgmental extended family. They're successful, or at least they present that way. Doctors, lawyers, high-level executives, all living in perfectly manicured neighborhoods, driving expensive cars, and making sure everyone knows it. I was the black sheep, not because I was a rebel or a troublemaker, but because I chose a path they deemed unworthy. I wanted to start my own tech company. This wasn't a crazy, pie-in-the-sky dream. I had a solid business plan, a degree in software engineering, and a relentless work ethic. But to them, it wasn't a real job. It wasn't a title with partner or ESQ or doctor next to it. It was a risk, and in their world, risk was synonymous with failure. The slow freeze-out began almost immediately. It started subtly, with pitying looks at Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, bless his heart, my Aunt Clara, a retired corporate lawyer, would sigh loud enough for the whole table to hear. Still playing with his little computer project, are we? Don't worry, honey, there's always a desk job somewhere if this doesn't work out. Then came the forgetting. An email chain about Uncle Robert's surprise 60th birthday party would go around, and somehow I'd be mysteriously left off. When I'd ask my mom about it later, she'd get an uncomfortable look and say, "Oh, they thought you'd be too busy with your thing." The thing. That's what my company was to them. Not a legitimate business, not a passion, just a temporary thing I was doing before I came to my senses. The biggest blow came when my cousin, Michael, got married. Michael and I were close as kids, or so I thought. He was one of the corporate high flyers, and his wedding was a spectacle, black tie, exclusive venue, the whole 9 yards. I never got an invitation. When I asked my mother about it, she confessed that Michael's fiancé, and by extension, the entire family, decided it would be awkward to have me there as my financial situation didn't align with the other guests, and they wanted a certain atmosphere. That cut me to the core. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated social excision based on my perceived lack of wealth and status. After that, I made a conscious decision. If they didn't want the financially awkward version of me, they wouldn't get any version of me. I stopped reaching out. I stopped trying to prove myself. I poured every ounce of my energy, my frustration, and my focus into my company. My parents were the only lifeline, and even they were often apologetic about the family's behavior. They were invited to everything, but they'd often decline, knowing it would hurt me to hear about the fun I was missing. But over time, as my business demanded more and more of my time, even those check-ins became less frequent. 12 years passed like this. 12 years of silence from the extended family. No calls, no texts, no Christmas cards. I missed funerals, I missed births, I missed everything because I was never told, never invited. It was total radio silence. I became a ghost to them. And you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me. The lack of their judgmental noise allowed me to focus completely. My little computer project took off. It wasn't an overnight success. There were years of grinding, near failures, and ramen dinners. But slowly, steadily, my company became a big deal. We secured major funding, our product went viral in its niche, and we scaled rapidly. 5 years ago, I sold a major stake in the company in an acquisition deal that changed my life forever. I became, for lack of a better word, extremely wealthy. I bought a house that was not just large, but architecturally stunning, nestled on a few private acres outside the city limits, the kind of house you see in magazines, all glass, stone, and meticulously landscaped grounds. It was my sanctuary, my reward for all the lonely, hard work, and a place where I was finally free from the need for their approval. I kept all of this private. The only people who knew the true extent of my success were my business partners and my parents, and even they didn't know the exact location of my new home. I hadn't posted anything on social media that would tip them off. I lived my life quietly and luxuriously. That is, until a few months ago, when my world was suddenly and violently interrupted by the past. The way they found me is still a little hazy, but I suspect it was a combination of a local business article mentioning my company's success and a very determined Google search of my name, which likely led them to public property records. One sunny, completely average Saturday morning, I was sitting on my back patio, drinking coffee, when my housekeeper, bless her heart, came running and looking utterly bewildered. "Sir," she whispered, "there are so many cars in the driveway. And people. They all look like they're dressed for church." I walked to the front of the house and looked out the massive panoramic windows. My heart actually skipped a beat, but not in a good way. Lined up on my circular gravel driveway, practically blocking the gate, were three gleaming, high-end SUVs, Aunt Clara's unmistakable silver Lexus, Uncle Robert's monstrous black Escalade, and Michael's brand new Range Rover. They were all standing on my meticulously laid paving stones, staring up at the house with their mouths slightly agape. My house, which is quite impressive, had clearly shocked them into silence. They were dressed in their Sunday best, Clara in a designer suit, the men in starched shirts and tailored jackets. They looked exactly like they did 12 years ago, only older, and now, much more surprised. My mind raced. Why were they here? Did something awful happen to my parents? But no, my parents had called me last night. There was only one reason they'd suddenly materialize on my doorstep after 12 years of calculated silence, and it was sitting right there in the driveway. Money. Or, more accurately, the sudden, undeniable proof of my success. The audacity of it all was breathtaking. 12 years of being dismissed as a failure, and now that I was undeniably a success, they had decided it was time to reconnect with family. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced since I first started my company. I put on a pair of sunglasses, walked slowly through my foyer, and opened the huge, custom-made front door. I didn't step outside immediately. I simply stood in the doorway, framed by the expensive woodwork, and waited. Aunt Clara was the first to rush forward, her face plastered with a nauseatingly fake smile. "Oh, darling, my name. Is that really you? We've been so worried about you. We heard about your little venture, and we just had to come and see you." "My little venture," I repeated, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Uncle Robert stepped up, all booming cheerfulness. "Son, this place. Absolutely magnificent. We're so proud of you, truly. We just knew you had it in you." Michael, the cousin who didn't want the awkward guest at his wedding, just looked around with a nakedly envious expression before forcing out, "Yeah, man. This is incredible. We've been meaning to catch up for ages." I took a step onto the porch, letting the morning sun glint off my expensive sunglasses. I let the silence stretch for a long, uncomfortable moment, taking in every detail of their strange smiles and glittering, opportunistic eyes. And then, I delivered the line I had been composing in my head. "Which of your exclusive events am I interrupting right now?" The smiles vanished. The air went out of the confrontation like a popped balloon. They stammered. "What?" Aunt Clara asked, her voice faltering. "Oh, no, dear, we just wanted to see you. We were in the neighborhood." "Don't lie, Aunt Clara," I interrupted, my voice still quiet but lethal. "This neighborhood is 45 minutes from where any of you live. You hunted me down. You found out I'm successful, and now, suddenly, I'm darling and family again." Uncle Robert tried to save it, stepping forward with his hand outstretched. "Now, son, that's not fair. We're family. We've always been family. We were just worried, and you've been so busy. We didn't want to bother you with all those things. All those things." I cut him off, finally letting a little bit of the 12 years of hurt and anger seep into my tone. All those things were my cousin's wedding, my grandfather's funeral, Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving, and countless birthday parties. Those were the things you actively, deliberately excluded me from because you decided my career path and my lack of money made me a social liability. You didn't want the struggling young entrepreneur on your polished guest lists. I paused, my gaze sweeping over each of their faces. You never worried about me. You worried about your image. And now, you're worried about missing out on a piece of this. I gestured broadly at the house, now that the financially awkward cousin has made it. That was the moment. That was the choice I had to make. Do I let them in? Let them spin their excuses? Let them try to worm their way back into my life for some inevitable favor or financial request? Or do I shut the door on the people who had so casually shut me out for over a decade? I had to make a final decision right then and there. Before I tell you what I did and what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let them attempt to mend the relationship? Or would you have delivered the final, definitive rejection? I waited for a response, but they were speechless, their faces shifting from surprise to anger to pure embarrassment. It was Aunt Clara, predictably, who finally found her voice, though it was now laced with spite. Well, I never. This is exactly why we stopped inviting you. You were always so dramatic and ungrateful. We were worried about you. Yes, worried that your thing would lead you to ruin. We just wanted to make sure you were okay, and maybe, perhaps, invite you back into the fold now that you're finally successful. Invite me back into the fold. I scoffed, taking my sunglasses off to look her directly in the eye. There is no fold, Aunt Clara. You dissolved it 12 years ago when you made it clear that your love and acceptance are conditional on my tax bracket. And I don't need your approval or your invitation. I took a deep breath and delivered the final, crushing blow. I want you to leave. Now. I want you to get in your expensive cars, turn around, and drive out of my life, just like you drove out of it 12 years ago. Michael, emboldened by his mother's anger, tried one last desperate plea. Come on, man. Don't be like this. We're family. I mean, I could really use some investment capital for a new venture, and who better to help family than... I cut him off with a sharp, humorless laugh. Stop. You don't get to ask me for money. You don't get to be my family when it's convenient. The only person I owe anything to is myself, and my mother for having to put up with all of you. But I certainly don't owe anything to the people who considered my presence at their wedding an awkward financial liability. My voice was calm, but the anger was burning a hole in my chest. I wasn't shouting. I was simply stating an undeniable, painful truth. I didn't wait for a reply. I just pointed to the gate. The gate code is simple. It's the number of years you spent ignoring me. But you won't need it on the way out. Just drive. I turned my back on them, walked back into the house, and calmly closed the massive door, not with a slam, but with a deliberate, heavy thunk that echoed the finality of the decision. I watched them from my living room window. They stood there for a few minutes, arguing amongst themselves, gesticulating wildly, clearly trying to decide who was to blame and how to salvage the situation. Then, defeated, they slowly got back into their SUVs. Aunt Clara's Lexus spun a little gravel as she sped away, a final, petulant gesture. That was the climax, the final confrontation I had rehearsed in my mind for years. The aftermath has been wonderfully, blissfully quiet. They haven't tried again. My mother later told me that Aunt Clara had called her, weeping and demanding that she talk some sense into me, calling me cruel and unforgiving. My mother, for the first time in her life, stood up to her sister completely. She told Aunt Clara that I was right, that they had treated me horribly, and that the only reason they were hurt was because their plan to exploit my success had failed. She said she was proud of me for protecting myself. My parents are the only ones who visit now, and when they do, they are overwhelmed by how much I've accomplished, not financially, but personally. They see the peace I've found in my sanctuary. I occasionally see news about my cousins and aunts. Uncle Robert is in some legal trouble, Michael's new venture went bust, and Aunt Clara is still just as judgmental. None of it bothers me. I've severed the cancerous limb, and I'm healthier for it. I learned that family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by respect, loyalty, and unconditional love. They mistook my early struggle for failure and my subsequent success for an opportunity to benefit. They got neither. I chose my peace and my self-respect over their manufactured drama and conditional acceptance. And I'm not sorry. I'm not cruel. I'm simply a man who recognized his own worth and refused to let people who tossed him aside 12 years ago suddenly reap the benefits of his harvest. I own my life, my peace, and that incredible house, all without a single hollow thanks or backhanded compliment from them. Like this video if you were on my side, and agree that some family ties are better off cut. Subscribe for more stories about justice served and boundaries enforced. And share your final thoughts on whether I was too harsh or perfectly justified in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next story.